It is hard to believe that it is time for this, but today we are going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This is one of my favorite videos to watch. I have been watching these videos on BookTube for a while, long before I had a channel, so I've been really excited to make my own for the first time. Basically, this is a mid-year check-in. If you've never seen this tag or these types of videos before, there's a list of preset questions. I wish I knew who to credit for these. I did not come up with them. They've been around for a really long time. But the point is just to give you a mid-year check-in on your goals, reflect on the reading you've done so far, look ahead to what you want to do in the second half of the year as far as reading. We're just going to jump into the questions, and then at the end, I'm going to tack on a little yearly goals update for myself. So starting off with a really easy, not difficult to answer at all question: what is the best book that you have read so far in 2026? On one hand, I've read a lot of books this year that I've really loved. On the other hand, I have not had a 5-star read that was not a reread since April. And I have not had a 5-star read that was not a reread or a book in a series that I love since March. Yeah, I don't know. I'm in like a little bit of a struggle bus, I feel like, with finding just these absolute standout reads at the moment. But what I did last year when I was trying to decide my best book of the year, I actually did a really fun bracket video. I'll link it if you want to go check that out. But when I got to the end and I was really struggling to make my decision, I thought, when I look back, what book is going to categorize this year for me? What am I just going to always remember? Oh my gosh, I read that in 2025 and I loved it. I kind of chose to do the same thing here. So what am I always going to remember making such a big impact on my first half of 2026? When I thought about it that way, it was not difficult to decide that my best book of the year so far is The Fellowship of the Ring. I have a whole vlog where I talk about and read the whole series earlier this year. I actually am already rereading The Fellowship of the Ring. I joined a book club that's reading through it really slowly this summer, and I'm like thrilled to be back in this book and in this world. I really just had the best time with these, but I absolutely adored that book, and I do think that it is going to definitely mark my 2026, at least as the first time I read it, because I know I will be rereading these books in this series going forward. This next question actually is not in the original questions. I guess they decided to keep it positive, but I am at my heart a hater. So I want to talk about the worst book that I read in 2026, so I'm adding this question. If we're not counting DNFs, then I think the worst book I read this year would have to be Watermoon. I'm not even going to say authors' names out loud because this is their life's work and I respect them so much for writing it. This book was not good. This book was a mess. She was doing too much. She had a lot of great ideas. She needed to pick 3. That's all I'll say about that. If we are counting DNFs, then the worst book I read this year is probably The Second Death of Locke. Again, not even going to say the author's name. I don't even remember the author's name, so it's great for us both. I felt like this author thought that I, as her reader, was an idiot. I have never felt so talked down to by a book. I felt like the author assumed I would have absolutely no reading comprehension skills, and so just decided to overly explain everything. There is a literal plot point that doesn't show up, I think, until 20, maybe 25% of the way through this book that is spoiled in the synopsis. The synopsis. I literally felt like I was losing my mind. I was like, anyway, moving on. Back to our regularly scheduled questions, which is the best sequel I've read so far this year. Buckle up because you're going to be hearing me talk a lot about The Lord of the Rings in this video, but I do have to give this prize to The Return of the King, which is the 3rd book in the series. It just absolutely brought it home. It just nailed the ending to this trilogy. I also want to give a shout out to Words of Radiance, which is the 2nd book in the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. I'm actually about to start book 4 of that series, probably within the next couple days, but book 2 has been my favorite of the series so far. I absolutely adored that book. A new release that I have not read yet. I'm assuming this means like it came out in the first half of the year. I haven't gotten to it yet. I still have yet to read the new Abby Jimenez book. I think it's called The Night We Met. I actually just got a Libby loan on it and I am going to the beach this weekend. So the stars have aligned. I have heard some iffy things about it, but people also didn't love her book last year, Say You'll Remember Me, and I loved that book. So my hopes are still high. Another book that came out earlier this year that I do really want to get to is Toni Morrison's new release. Obviously, this is a posthumous release, but it's called Language as Liberation, and her nonfiction absolutely slaps. So I want to get to that book really soon. Speaking of new releases, the next question is my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. There are so many. There are so many new books coming out in series that I absolutely love. If we're talking about standalones, I have two that I have to shout out because two of my absolute all-time favorite authors have new books releasing this fall. So we're getting a new Emily St. John Mandel in September. That book is called Exit Party. And then we are getting a new Barbara Kingsolver in October, and that book is called Partita. So I know in my heart of hearts that both of those books are going to be 5-star bangers. And like I said, I'm in a bit of a 5-star drought. So I hope I get out of it before September. But if not, then I know I have those books to look forward to. All right, back to hater territory, because the next question is my biggest disappointment so far. So this isn't necessarily like the worst books I've read, but maybe it was books that I had much higher hopes for, and then they kind of let me down. The two that I want to talk about are Vigil by George Saunders, which was just, I don't even know how else to say it other than it was a letdown. I loved Lincoln in the Bardo, and this book just felt like it had no point. I really didn't know what I was reading. I only finished it because the audio production was such high quality, but the book itself, no bueno. Probably an even bigger disappointment to me was Wuthering Heights. I have a vlog for that book. I'll link it down below. I was just really let down by that. I think I had very high hopes because I love classics. I read a lot of classics and I by and large just love them. And this book I really had quite a poor experience with. I didn't really like the story. The writing was good, but it just couldn't make up for how much I disliked the plot and the characters. So that was a very, very big disappointment, to be honest. My biggest surprise of the year, I feel like I've had several books that really surprised me this year, but I have to give the prize for this one to The White Mosque by Sofia Samatar. I had never heard of this book. I knew nothing about this book. I plucked it off the library shelf and thought, this looks interesting, and then ended up absolutely adoring this book. I read this back in January and I am still thinking about it. It is a memoir, history, creative nonfiction blend. It's so interesting. The author is talking about her own Mennonite faith and mixed racial and ethnic heritage, as well as discussing the migration of Mennonites out of Russia into Central Asia, what is modern day Uzbekistan. She also makes a pilgrimage to Uzbekistan in the current day, and it's all entwined together. It was such a good memoir, and I want more people to read this book. So speaking of surprises, the next question is favorite new authors, and this could be like debut authors or new to me. Both of these authors are not debut. They have been writing a long time, but I had never read them before and was very pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed their books this year. The first is Robert Jackson Bennett. I read The Tainted Cup and A Drop of Corruption earlier this year, and it is exactly the type of fantasy series that I love, and he has written a lot of other books, so I'm really excited to go back and read his backlist. Another new to me author I read this year and loved is Isabel Cañas. I read Vampires of El Norte, and it was just chef's kiss. I think I gave the book a 4. I wanted to give it higher, but things kind of fell apart with the plot for me towards the end. But as far as atmosphere and writing style, I just absolutely loved it. I think she has 2 books on her backlist that I haven't read yet, so I will definitely be getting to those. The next question is a new fictional crush. I literally scanned through every book I read this year, and I really haven't read any romances. And the ones that I did, I was like, no, he's not really a crush. It's not a new fictional crush because I don't know, I couldn't tell you the age I was when I first saw Aragorn bust through the doors of Helm's Deep, but I do have to give this award to Aragorn, son of Arathorn, called Elisar the Elfstone, Dunedain, Isildur's heir, Elendil, son of Gondor, and so on. Similarly, the next question was your new favorite character or a favorite character this year, and this goes hands down to Samwise Gamgee. I adore him. Wow, I almost got choked up just thinking about Samwise Gamgee. He is one of the greatest characters of all time. I will stand on that opinion 10 toes down. Let's stay on that train for the next question, which is a book that made you cry, Return of the King. Obviously, in my Lord of the Rings vlog, I did a list actually where I talked about every time in that book that I started tearing up or crying. I think there were 6 or 7, and I think over half of them had to do with Sam. But I definitely really got emotional about that book. Similarly, Oathbringer, which is the 3rd book in the Stormlight Archive series. I think I talked about it in a vlog, but there was one point in the book where I think it took me 30 minutes to read 10 pages because I kept having to put the book down. I was literally putting my hands in my face and crying. I will say though, it was a little bit of a dark horse, the book that made me cry probably the hardest this year, quite literally my eyes kind of swelled. My face was puffy and my eyes swelled because I cried so hard. The award for that does go to Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. From everything that everybody had said about this book, I just was not anticipating to be torn up. And I really, really was. And that's all I will say about that, because I don't want to give any spoilers. As far as a book that made me happy, I did a reread of Pride and Prejudice earlier this year. I had not read that book since college. It is the Jane Austen that it has been the longest since I read it, and I just really wanted to revisit it and see how it struck me in this time of my life, and it struck me as an absolute unmitigated delight. I love Jane Austen's writing. It's so funny and clever. I think part of the reason that Pride and Prejudice is so beloved, other than just the sheer romance of it all, is that it is a genuinely hilarious book. It made me so happy. I also just finished the audiobook of Andrew Sean Greer's new release, Villa Coco. Speaking of delights, so Greer is known for writing less, and that book was so funny and charming and clever and just lovely. And this book was the same. A young, I want to call him a kid, but he's probably like 22, he's fresh out of college, moves to Italy to become kind of an assistant to this like eccentric Italian baroness, and it's just delightful. It really just, I felt like I was beaming the whole time I was listening to this book. The next question I'm going to have to recuse myself from because it is the most beautiful book you've bought this year. And I went down the list of books I have purchased this year multiple times, like surely something is gonna stand out to me, and they're just all a little meh. I don't know. I guess if anything, I would have to give this to A Ghastly Catastrophe, which is the new book in the Veronica Speedwell series. I do think that those have really pretty covers, but I guess maybe it doesn't strike me that way because all the covers have very similar designs. I don't know. We'll have to give the prize to that because everything else I was looking at and I was like, ooh, I guess it's good. I guess it means I don't buy books based on their covers, but there's some real stinkers in there. The final question on the original questions list was, what books do I need to read by the end of the year? There's a lot of books that I want to get to, but for sure my 26 and 26 list is going to be my priority. So I'm over halfway through the list, which is great. I've read 15 so far, which means I have 11 left, which is very doable. So actually we're going to switch over now to checking in on yearly goals, talking about the rest of the year. I will pull out the reading journal, which is falling apart. Yay for us. The cover has just come off. So when I first made my 26 and 26 list, I put 4 rereads, 7 new releases, and then 15 backlist, most of which were like classics or literary fiction. I've read 3 of the rereads. The one that I have left is Castle of Water by Dane Huckelbridge. Only 2 of the 7 new releases have come out so far, so I have the remaining 5 left. It's the new Six of Crows novella, which actually, as I'm filming this, comes out next week. I'm so excited. The sequel to the, what does she call it? Dearly Beloathed duology. This book is The Exquisite Torment of Loving Your Enemy. That comes out in 2 weeks. The 4th book in the Assistant to the Villain series comes out in August. And then, like I mentioned, we have the new Emily St. John Mandel book in September. And then the final book in the Ninth House trilogy also comes out in September. So I'm very, very excited about those. So most of these are, you know, sequels, parts of series, and it will be no great struggle to read them as soon as they come out. And then I just have 5 left on my backlist and classics list. I have 1984, which I tried to read in May. I started it and I was like, this is not the vibe. Now, when will it ever be the vibe? I don't know, but I will get to it. I will return to it by the end of the year. I need to read 100 Years of Solitude. I need to read O Pioneers by Willa Cather, East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann. Did I save 3 of the chunkiest and most intimidating classics for the second half of the year? Yes, I did. I'm probably most intimidated by Dr. Faustus. Me and early 20th century German authors do not traditionally get along very well, but I'm gonna give it a shot. If I really truly hate it, I will allow myself a DNF, but I want to give it a good chance. I need to just not save it for last because I don't want to get to December and then feel like I have to, during Christmas time, force myself through what is sure to be a wholly depressing and difficult to read book. So to close us out, I just want to do a little bit of a check-in on my goals. It's the first page of my reading journal. I made 9 reading goals for this year. you'll see some of them are a little bit easier to measure and check in on than others. So the first one was to get and keep my physical TBR below 20 books. I started the year at 40. Actually, as I'm posting this, I am in the middle of a vlog series where I'm doing a reader on haul. I feel pretty hopeful. I think that I'm gonna end June at around 23 or 24 books, which is great. That's what I wanted to be, is like in the low 20s. I think that I will for sure make this goal. Goal 2 was to get and keep my NetGalley ARCs below 5 books. So ARCs are advanced reader copies. I can get digital ones through a service called NetGalley where you request and are approved for certain books. I was doing so good on this. I was down to 2. They were like old books. I'd had them for years. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna knock this out. It's gonna be great. Did I go on a request spree? Yes, I did. So I am back up to 7. They're all new releases. I'm hoping to get to them soon so I don't get behind again. Anyway, did this one, then reversed. But that's okay. That's why I said get and keep, because I knew there would probably be fluctuation. My third goal was to read 20 classics. I've read, it's 14 or 15. 14, which honestly is pretty good. I think all 5 of the books that I had left on my 26 and 26 backlist are classics. So if I read those, then I'm basically to my goal. My 4th goal was to start a booktube channel. Did that. My 5th goal was to read Lord of the Rings series. Did that. Now we get into the ones that are a little harder to measure. My 6th goal was to use physical library resources. So I'm a library girly. I have been forever. And I love Libby. I'm like Libby's #1 fan. Once we hit COVID and then I moved, I just have not used the physical library really probably since pre-COVID. And I did not like that. And I moved back to North Carolina, kind of settled into a new place, had a new library branch, and I just wanted this year to actually use physical library resources. So that looks like going into the library and sitting and reading, like using the building, checking out things so they stay in circulation. So I've been checking out books, DVDs, puzzles. I just keep one of my library checkout receipts like in the month in my reading journal and just keep track of how much I checked out. And so then I can plug that into my stats. So far, I think I've checked out a minimum of 3 to 4 things every month, which I'm happy with that. My 7th goal was just to use Amazon less for books. I mean, just in general, but for books. I've never really bought a ton of books on Amazon, but I did use it for pre-orders, for the rare pre-order that I do. So I canceled all of those and I decided I'm either just gonna pre-order through a local indie or I'm just gonna go to the store and buy the book when it comes out. I'm not so busy that I can't do that. And so far that's what I've done. Again, I just have like a sticky note tracking for the yearly stats, like where I bought books. And so far I've just bought 1 from Amazon this year. I bought 4 from indies or brick and mortar bookstores. I've bought 11 secondhand. I'm definitely a secondhand book gal. I'd say I'm doing pretty good on that goal. My 8th goal was to try to write longer and more thoughtful book reviews. A lot of times my goals kind of build on each other from the previous year. So in 2025, my goal was just to write a review for everything that I read, even if it was a sentence or 2. I just found that the more I thought about it, the more I felt like star ratings just didn't really give enough information either for other readers or even for myself if I want to go back and look at how did I feel about this book, what did I think about it, but all I gave it was a star rating. That doesn't really help me very much. So I wanted to challenge myself to write a little bit and I did that and I felt like, okay, that's great. Let's grow on that. And so this year I have been trying to sit with reviews a little bit longer to kind of wait a day or 2 before I write them. Actually, one thing that's really helped is I just keep a running note in my notes app where it's like, I keep a heading for whatever book I'm reading and I just jot down notes as I go. So that way when I get to the review, I have real-time updates from myself basically, and I can note all the things that struck me. I'll save quotes or I'll look up quotes from the book to put in my review to give ideas of the writing and the vibe. So that's been really fun. I don't consider myself a writer. I have no particular goals to be a writer. Most of my writing I've done has been academic writing, but I think just writing in general is a good skill to keep fresh. So writing book reviews is one way that I do that. My last goal, I couldn't think of a better way to word this, but it was to read more non-book things. By that, I basically meant read more short form content, but not short as in like, an Instagram caption. Somewhere in between like a caption and a book, meaning an essay or an article or a singular poem, not a book of poems. I just found myself saving these articles and then never reading them because I was like, oh, that's gonna take too long. girl, what do you mean? You read entire books, like just read the article. I kind of just considered that informally a part of my personal curriculum for the year, but I do just have like a spot where I write down essays and articles that I've read and give myself, you know, a spot to write a brief reflection. I think for me, just a spot to track it is helpful, and just to do reflections as well. I haven't read one. I guess the last one I tracked was May 18th. So I should get back into that. I don't want to fall off towards the last half of the year. So if we're going based on goals and things like that, my reading year is going really, really well. I'm kind of right on track with where I wanted to be with goals, with my 26 and 26 list. My only complaint really is my 5-star book drought. I'm picking books that I feel like should be 5 stars, and I'm giving books 4.5. There are a lot of books that have gotten 4.5. Maybe I just am in a mood. These books really should be 5 stars, but I'm feeling like a hater. I don't know. All that being said, hoping for that to change soon. Hoping that the second half of the year has just as many good books as the first half. I would love to know in the comments how your reading year is going. If you're like, I've read one book and I loved it, then I want to know. Tell me about it. While you're down there, make sure that you like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. We will be back next week to regularly scheduled vlog content, finishing up my Reader on Haul series. So I hope you come back for that, and I will see y'all next time. Bye!